Okay, now we're moving into lips, and I have to say this is a fun one. It's such a pretty mouth here. Remember that I had said it's halfway between bottom of nose and bottom of chin. But in this case, I realized that it was really a little higher, so I adjusted. So between the lips is this line here. Keep it very light and thin. I mean, this line isn't even straight, right? She's got that smile kind of shape. I might just draw that as a guide, but usually I don't even start in with that. The very first thing I do when I'm getting to the mouth is I separate above the center of the mouth and below. So below, I'm going to build a sphere, okay, as wide and short or as tall and narrow as needed, depending on the model, Okay, so we've got the shape down here. And she's slightly smiling, so in the case of smiling or in the case of sometimes the mouth really feels like it has a dent in the center. Sometimes I'll use 2 ellipses for the bottom. So it can be 1 or 2. But for the upper lip, I almost exclusively always use 2 spheres. Okay, and you pay attention how tall you want them to be, how wide. Okay, once I've drawn in all these spheres, I feel a lot less scared to come in and get really specific. Just before I come in with an actual line, see, before I ever do lines, I'm always doing forms. If I get really specific, I just want to pay attention how wide is that mouth compared to the nose, let's say. I might adjust my spheres accordingly. And then I always say, when you look at a face, look around the room, look around your friends, whatever you're looking at, the darkest part of that face is that line. It's like a black line. So once you've built the mouth, you can come in with confidence, create that line. Sometimes that line has some differentiation, like a variation in the center. Sometimes it's smooth, because again, a very unique thing to each model. But I do try to keep the corners turned up ever so slightly, because I so often see such angry fashion models, such angry fashion images. If you turn those corners down, there really is a subconscious kind of angry vibe that comes across. Sometimes people draw these beautiful collections with these really angry looking models. And I'm hoping your girl's going to be feeling really great in your clothes, right? So, dark line for center. And then to really finish it off, I just put a dark shadow under the lower lip. And I'm not making that up. You know, there is this dark shadow here. Again, squinting will always help you see it. And another trick I have, like, people tend to think lips, just like that. Never draw the lips like that because it looks like lip liner. So drawing the outside edges of the lips, okay, we see these edges in real life, but they're not black, right? They're very subtle differences in tone, skin tone to pink, let's say. Sometimes even the edge of the lip is actually very light compared to, it's anything but a black line. You know, unless you've put lip liner on and then your lipstick came off and the lip liner is still there. And that's usually not a look that people are going for. So, to create the shape of the mouth, you really draw everything but the mouth. With the nose, you draw everything but the nose. Okay, so shadow underneath, deep shadow line through the center. And one of my favorite tricks is to shade the entire upper lip. So you see me drawing a line now, but the whole thing, the line disappears because I'm going to add tone. Okay, so the line becomes only the edge of tone. And that's one great way to create a mouth. Another way would be to, I'm noticing in the example here that there's actually more shadow on the outer edges of the mouth here. Now granted, for design illustration, fashion design, etc., you're rarely going to need this much detail in your faces unless you're really doing a fashion illustration of a face or to promote beauty products. When you're creating your figures with faces on them, you're never even going to go this far. But the more face studies you do, the more you'll build your vocabulary of shapes, shadows, techniques, and then you can use those to create the faces for your models. Okay, now we're done with what we would call the face, aren't we? That's the face, but we have a whole head to deal with. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. Okay, one of the biggest mistakes people make is adding hair onto the head, especially at the sides, which is totally appropriate for voluminous hair. But so often, when the hair is close to the head, I notice students adding a lot more. So this is a big test in drawing what we see, not what we think. Drawing what we see, not what we feel, or not symbolizing things. And this is a whole journey that we're all going to go on together, so don't worry. I do feel in my photo here that there is volume added to the height of the hair here. Like her head might be there, and the hair is actually hyperextended, so that's okay. But a lot of times it's not, and I will discuss that in other face demonstrations that we will also do. So what's my point? Okay, so we have to define the hairline, which is not a solid line, right? It's a very broken line, so it can be really stressful and confusing for us. So let's just plot it out. It's usually like a quarter or a third down the head. And you can, when you sketch it out lightly, you can pay attention to how it relates to landmarks on the face, such as how close does it come to the eyebrows. Okay, this section here is very important. On the other side too, how close does it come to the eyebrows? What if you could break it down into one diagonal line? What would that line look like? Okay, this is just helping me define some extremities of the hairline. That's it. Okay. Next, I'm going to focus in a little bit on these ears. Pay attention to, usually I can draw a diagonal line from the eyebrow and from the mouth. So imagine an endless diagonal, okay? And that will help me find the top and bottom of my ear shape. And I do that on both sides. Okay, but the big question when you're drawing in those ears is how close are they or how far are they from the eyes? So some people will say half an eye will bring you to your temples. Use that as a guideline. Then look at your drawing, see if you need to adjust it. But half an eye will help keep you close enough, because people tend to go way too far. People rarely go too close, but they tend to go too far. So just try to keep it as close as it really is when you're looking at a sample. Okay. And then we're going to have to start committing now to a jawline and things like that. So here I go. Starting next to the eye, I'm just going to carefully carve my way into this contour line, always paying attention to how close is the jaw to the lip, how close is it to the chin, being as realistic as possible, how close is it to the side of the eye. Okay, and we're going to talk a lot more about contours and creating lines, gosh, from a million different angles throughout the course. So you can only get better at this as we progress. She does have sort of a split chin. I could kind of draw that in if I wanted help creating that shape. And what I like to do is sketch in the lines as I'm sort of map making the face, but then when I do come in to actually draw the line, if I like what I sketched, I'm going to come in with a really one single clean line. After all that careful planning, not a sketchy one. All right, and then I can come back now to those ears. We don't need every detail for the ear. Okay, fashion illustration isn't usually about ears, it's usually about something else, so we just minimize that a little bit. And now with back to the hair, we have the hairline and the hair. Hair is a real mixed bag.